In Dishonored, you play as Corvo Attano, the Royal Protector, a man of peerless training, who's faced with impossible choices. At the start of the game, he's forced to watch as the woman he loves is murdered, as his daughter is kidnapped, as he's betrayed and framed for these crimes, and then given an opportunity to escape. What would you do? Would you kill an innocent guard because he's in your way? Would you accept a deal from a dark and mysterious god for power beyond the comprehension of normal men? What would you do to get your daughter back? And who would you kill if they stand in your way? And then finally, what about the men who betrayed you? Will you bring them to ruin as a consequence of their actions, or watch their final moments as you take their life with your own two hands? These are the choices that Dishonored presents. These are the decisions you'll make as you play through the game. And now, I add in one more question. Was it good? It's been nearly 10 years since Dishonored was released, and a lot can happen in that time. Games have certainly changed. Back when the game first came out, I was very impressed by it. But does that hold up in 2022? You begin your journey in Coldridge Prison. You've been jailed, tortured, and soon you'll be sentenced to death. But a friend's left you a last meal, and a message. Instructions to meet them at the edge of the sewers, and of course, a key to your cell. With the help of a weapon left by some careless guards, you're back in business. And now begins your first choice. Do you walk up to the guards and simply kill them? Do you attempt to sneak past and go undetected, knock out anyone you can't avoid, and become an undetectable ghost? Or do you go for a mix of all of the above? After successfully escaping from prison, you'll find yourself in, well, the sewers, filled with guards, corpses, and of course, rats. And this is where Dishonored really shines. The graphics might not be up to par in terms of modern standards, at least not in terms of realism, and some of the character models definitely look a little bit jank. But the world's not supposed to be beautiful. It's dark, grimy, and grungy. It's a classic steampunk dystopia, helped along in no small part by the fact that the city's currently suffering from the rat plague, and thousands of rats flooding out of the sewers. You'll find plenty of bodies of the plague's victims. You'll find plenty of rats all too happy to consume those bodies. And of course, you'll find graffiti, the haunting messages of people who perished or fell into madness. After you escape from the sewers, you meet up with a friend, a ragtag group who stand behind Emily Caldwin, who want to see her return to the throne, and who want to help you with your revenge. And then you'll meet one more ally, in a scene that's both iconic and extremely memorable. In fact, it's done impeccably, and it holds up perfectly even today. That's Corvo's meeting with the Outsider.
Hello, Corvo. Your life has taken a turn, has it not? The Empress is dead. Her precious daughter Emily is lost somewhere in the city, and you will play a pivotal role in the days to come. For this, I have chosen you and drawn you into the void. I am the Outsider, and this is my mark. There are forces in the world and beyond the world, great forces that men call magic. And now, these forces will serve your will. Use this newfound power, my gift to you. Come find me.
I love everything about this, from the Outsider's somewhat casual demeanor, to his sense of camaraderie, to the fact that he knows just a little bit too much. The voice acting sells it perfectly. In fact, out of all three Dishonored games, I think the Outsider's voice acting in Dishonored 1 is far and above the best. From here, Corvo's not only armed with his training and deadly instincts, he also has supernatural powers. You can teleport across distances, see through walls, summon rats to consume your foes, or even bend time to your will. This is what sets Dishonored apart from Assassin's Creed, and one of the reasons why I found the gameplay to be just so damn fun. You're given a variety of approaches to your various targets, sneaking through sewers by possessing animals, moving along rooftops, or just walking in the front door and killing anything that moves. It's this blend of stealth gameplay, narrative choices, and supernatural powers that makes Dishonored so special. And while the graphics might not seem all that fancy, they're certainly fitting to the City of Dunwall, a place that's run down and on the brink of despair. If you thought it was only the prison and sewers that were in shambles, no, the streets are as well. In stark contrast to the Overseer's palace that's almost pristine. Clearly, while the people are suffering, some are profiting. And that leaves you with yet another choice. As you play through the game, you'll be given a mission objective. For example, the first mission has the objective of kill Overseer Campbell, or find some other way of dealing with him. Along the way, you might run into other characters who have their own goals and agendas, such as Granny Rags. You can either steer clear of her, or get involved in her beef with the Bottle Street Boys, picking one side or the other. Once you reach the Overseer's headquarters, you'll have to break in and head to the heart of a building to find Overseer Campbell. He's in league with the Spy Master. He knows your plight, and he didn't care. In fact, most likely, he was one of the minds behind all of it. And before you left, you were given one other piece of interesting information. He was meeting with a man from the City Watch, someone who, by all accounts, is a good man, and Campbell plans to have him killed. So you're left with more choices. You can simply watch and do nothing. Campbell will kill a good man, and then you can kill Campbell. Or, you can intervene, switch the wine glasses, and watch Campbell die by his own poison. But maybe you want a hands-on approach, or maybe you think that Campbell deserves a fate worse than death. In that case, you can simply spill the glasses entirely, and from there watch as things unfold. But then, what of Campbell? If left to his own devices, he'll flee back to his sanctum. After all, he doesn't want anyone finding out what's in his black book, and that seems like the safest place for it. So if you follow him, you're free to deal with him with your own two hands. And this is where Dishonored gets interesting, because on top of offering stealth gameplay, every mission has a non-lethal alternative. You can play through the entire game without killing a single soul. In the case of Campbell, this comes in the form of the Heretic's brand. Once branded, Campbell will be cast out, the Overseers will refuse to recognize his authority, and he'll be left ruined, a shell of a man trapped in his own personal hell. And so it's left to you. Which fate does he deserve? But of course, setting a narrative can only take a game so far. Does the gameplay hold up in 2022? Dishonored's combat very much reminds me of early Assassin's Creed games. You can hold right-click to block, left-click to attack. Generally speaking, enemies will either try to attack, in which case you have to dodge or block. They'll try to block, in which case you don't want to attack. Or they'll try to dodge if you attack them. You can mix this up by adding in powers, say summoning a swarm of rats to attack your enemies and distract them. Or by using your crossbow, shooting enemies with a gun. And if you're feeling a little spicy, maybe throwing a grenade. And combat was more or less what I expected. On higher difficulties, it can be quite punishing, especially when you're fighting against multiple enemies, and don't use your powers to cheat. On that note, use your powers to cheat, it's way more fun that way. But as I played through, one thing that really surprised me was enemy AI. I expected the enemies to be kind of dumb. After all, this is a game from 10 years ago, and game AI isn't always known for being the most responsive. But what I found was, they weren't. In one of the early missions, you encounter a wall of light. A wall of light's essentially a giant Tesla coil that turns everything around it to ash. Yes, I know that's not how Tesla coils work, but let's put real-world physics aside for a minute. And you have the option to rewire it. This means instead of zapping Corvo, the wall of light will zap everything else. After doing this, I made a little distraction to get the attention of the guards. And sure enough, right after I did, the first guard ran directly into the wall of light like a lemming happily jumping off a cliff. But what happened next surprised me. The remaining guards didn't follow. They saw their friend get vaporized, and they knew the wall of light was dangerous, so instead, they fired at me from range. They waited for me to come to them, rather than charging to their death pointlessly. And this is a level of AI that I hadn't expected from the game. So I was pleasantly surprised. Furthermore, the game's still quite challenging. Sure, on lower difficulties, the enemies are kinda dumb, and not very aware of their surroundings, but if you turn the awareness up, then you have to be really careful, otherwise you're going to be detected and it's going to be a bad time. If you're not paying attention, you can very easily be surrounded and killed, or you can be shot from a distance and take far too much damage. So, much like with the setting and story, the gameplay holds up really well even in 2022. So, should you play Dishonored in 2022? Well, before I answer that, a quick reminder that if you've enjoyed the video so far, please do leave a like as that really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. For more game reviews and more Dishonored content, then sub to the channel and ring the bell to be notified whenever I upload. And finally, if what I've said already has convinced you to buy Dishonored, you can purchase the game for Steam while also supporting me over at my Nexus link. That'll be down in the description. But for now, was Dishonored as good as I remembered it? And should you play it in 2022? Surprisingly, yes it is. Dishonored holds up just as well today as it did back then. The narrative's still incredibly engaging. The graphics themselves may not have held up the best, but the setting in the world feels dark, gritty, and grungy, exactly what you want from a plague-stricken city. The game's combat mechanics, while still difficult, are very rewarding. and while powers can certainly be used to cheese your way through the game, you can also play through as regular old Corvo, no powers whatsoever, and you'll even get a Steam achievement if you do. Enemy AI held up far better than I expected, and the narrative choices within any given mission are quite enjoyable. You get a lot of options. You can either go in the front door, all guns blazing, sneak around using the balconies, ledges, and various rooftops, or find your own path using the possession power. Unfortunately, your narrative choices within the game don't have as much of an impact on the ending as I remembered. As it turns out, it's kind of simplified down to high chaos and low chaos. Low chaos being, you're a good guy, you don't go out of your way to kill people excessively, and you get a good ending. High chaos, you're role-playing as Jack the Ripper, you probably killed a few too many civilians just because they happened to get in your way, and now no one really trusts you anymore, except for, of course, Emily. And while it might have been nice to see something that's just a little bit more complicated than that, the game still does a great job of presenting narratively engaging choices within each mission, so I can forgive them for wrapping it up at the end with just one of two buckets. The game was also a lot shorter than I remembered, but not in a bad way. I feel like these days, too many games say they're a 40 or 60 hour experience, but offer 10 to 15 hours of solid gameplay, and then 20 plus of just walking through an empty world. Dishonored, on the other hand, offers 6 to 10 hours of gameplay, but it's very content dense. You never really feel like, oh, the only reason I'm walking through the street is I have to get over there. It's a waste of my time, and I wish I could just go back to the main story. Everything's relevant. It's a tightly wound narrative with tightly wound gameplay to boot. As you explore every area, you'll find things that are relevant. Runes to upgrade your powers, bone charms to make Corvo a little bit supernatural, side stories such as Granny Rags, and of course, much more. So, was Dishonored as good as I remembered? Absolutely yes. And should you play Dishonored in 2022? Well, if you like to judge a book by its cover, and can't stand anything that doesn't have hyper-realistic graphics, maybe this isn't for you. But if you can look past that, you'll find an engaging and deeply satisfying gameplay experience. Dishonored has a great stealth system, amazing narrative, and one of the best character introductions I've ever seen. It's right up there with Borderlands 2's Handsome Jack. And so, I have one question for you. What's a game that you remember playing 5, 10, or 15 years ago, that you thought was really good, and then you went back and played it, and you realized it's exactly as amazing as you thought it was? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to put them down in the comments below, or join the Discord, where you can ask questions, get build help, and hang out with the community. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. They're awesome, and they get to show it by having their name on screen in the credits of all my videos. So if you want to see your name here, be sure to check the link in the description. You can also help support me by purchasing Steam games through my Nexus. And if you want a water bottle or a cool shirt, I have a link to my official merch shop in the description. I hope you learned something today, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.